Egyptian-African ties have witnessed a notable development since President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi took office, as Egypt exerts unprecedented efforts to enhance ties with African countries in all domains. Cairo has called for increased cooperation among African countries to stimulate economic growth, with all focus on facilitating trade and investment across Africa. That's our topic for today, and we will start with our top stories for today. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received a phone call from Jordanian King Abdullah II on Tuesday. Presidential spokesperson Mohammed al-Shinnawi said the calls addressed developments in the regional arena with regard to implementing a ceasefire agreement in the Gaza Strip, including exchange of hostages and the access of humanitarian aid to the Strip. President el-Sisi and King Abdullah II stressed the need to fully implement the agreement and the inevitability of the rapid reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. Also, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi held a phone call with King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa of Bahrain. The presidential spokesperson said the call emphasized the depth and strength of the relations between the two countries and brotherly peoples. The call highlighted the need to work on strengthening cooperation in all fields, including economy and investment. Ambassador Mohammed al-Shinnawi added that the call addressed developments in the regional arena and efforts made to ensure full implementation of humanitarian aid to alleviate the crisis suffered by residents of Gaza Strip and the need for a unified Arab position to support the achievement of lasting peace and stability in the Middle East. And now we'll go for our first report for tonight, and we'll be back after it. Stay tuned.
Egypt is keen to prioritize Africa in its foreign policy, as its relations with African states are grounded in shared political, geographical, economic and cultural ties, both historically and at present. This deepened engagement with African nations is more necessary now than ever before, in the face of geopolitical developments that create security, political and economic challenges in the region and the world. This is why President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has given his directives to boost bilateral political, economic, health, technological as well as cultural relations between Egypt and African states, and has particularly instructed the need to strengthen Egypt's trade and investment cooperation within the African continent. The President has ordered bodies concerned to intensify efforts to enhance cooperation relations with African countries at economic and commercial levels. Egyptian companies have broadened investments in African markets. For his part, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Immigration and Expatriates Affairs Badr Abdel-Atsi emphasized that Egypt's relations with Africa are a cornerstone of its foreign policy, and the government is committed to strengthening ties with countries across the continent. The top diplomat further outlined Egypt's position on key issues affecting Egypt's national security and the stability of the continent, including the situation in Sudan, the Horn of Africa, and the issue of the Grand Ethiopian Dam. He highlighted initiatives and programs implemented through the Egyptian Agency for Partnership and Development, the Cairo International Center for Conflict Resolution and Peacekeeping, the establishment of a mechanism for investment in the Nile Basin, and an Egyptian Export Guarantee Agency for Africa. He further emphasized the significant presence of Egyptian companies in Africa, particularly in the field of infrastructure, and reiterated Egypt's commitment to fostering economic, commercial and investment activities with African countries in the future. The Foreign Minister explained that Egypt's membership in the African Peace and Security Council from 2024 to 26 and its presidency of the Council in October reflects Egypt's diplomatic activity on the continent and its desire to deepen partnerships with African nations. He also expressed Egypt's readiness to offer technical expertise and support to Africa in its development initiatives.
Welcome back. We're joined by Professor Nevine Nakhla, Professor of Strategic Management. Thanks for being with us.
Very honored.
Thank you very much. Professor, how do you see African-Egyptian relations under President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and what we call presidential diplomacy?
Yes. First of all, our beloved President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, His Excellency, since he took office in 2014, and his vision was the international relationship of Egypt with the rest of the world, especially Africa, because we are African and this is our continent. To highlight on the importance of His Excellency ties and relationship with the as policy and as economic enhancement, we see that His Excellency, half of his visits outside of Egypt is in Africa. So this is a proof of the importance of the relationship of our continent. Our continent is 54 countries, so it's a huge continent, and we have very historical relationship with our continent, and His Excellency is emphasizing and taking very good steps towards enhancing this relationship and these ties with our African continent.
Okay. How far do you think enhancing security and stability in African countries comes as top priority of Egypt's foreign policy, especially in the face of geopolitical developments the world is witnessing and our region in past and specifically is witnessing too?
Of course, we share the same borders, we share the same continent. So security and peace in our continent is very important, and what happens in a country definitely will affect the whole continent. And we see that Egypt's role is very crucial and very important in all the meetings and the conferences and the alliances and everything. And Egypt was head of the African Union in 2019. Also, if we go back to history, Egypt was one of the first countries that made the African Union, started the African Union from the Organization of African Union. It was the OAU, and then it became the African Union, and Egypt was one of the main countries. Also, we see Egypt ties and Egypt's role not only in the African Union sharing, but also in many other organizations and many other things, like the NEPAD. Egypt was one of the NEPAD countries. Also, if we will talk about the AFCFTA, the greatest African free trade agreement, continental free trade agreement in the world, the greatest agreement in the world, Egypt was one of the beginners to enter in this agreement. So our political will and our president and our political vision and will is 100% towards Africa's security and peace and relationship and ties.
There is a political will, as you said, in Egypt to solve conflicts in Africa in a peaceful way through adopting a comprehensive approach to address such causes via regional and international initiatives. How do you see that, and could you give us examples?
The first example that comes in my mind, we saw that His Excellency the President of Kenya was in Egypt a few days ago, and this is the first Kenyan visit to Egypt, for example. We can also give an example with the visit a couple of years ago, the triple visit of His Excellency, our beloved President, to Angola, and then Zambia, and then Mozambique, and attending the COMESA meeting then. We saw, as we said, that half of His Excellency visits outside of Egypt is in Africa. A lot of ties, a lot of initiatives. We see also the great efforts going through the Egypt-Cape Town road, and this is connecting Africa together. Egypt's strategic location between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea is the gateway for Africa to other continents and other places around the world. So I mean, our role is very crucial, and a lot of initiatives. We saw the initiative of the Central Bank of Egypt. We saw, as we said, the NEPAD, a lot of initiatives, transport, green energy, construction, economical, a lot of things taking place right now on the ground to show the great political and economical relationship with Africa.
Dr. Nevine, Egypt has always stressed its intention for stability and security in the African continent. How far that benefits Egypt as well as African countries to achieve sustainable development?
Of course, you cannot achieve sustainable development, and we have the Africa Vision 2063, and of course the Sustainable Development 2030. All this, you cannot achieve sustainable development and growth and economical growth when you have any peace issues or conflicts, or you have poverty, or you have literacy, or you have health problems. So the four sides, the four corners, will not, any country or any continent, and our continent will never reach the highest potentials of economical growth with any peace issues or conflict issues or health issues or poverty or anything that puts a burden between sustainable development. And Egypt is a very peaceful country, and we are always on very good relations with our neighbors and good ties.
Yeah. Talking of achieving sustainable development, Egypt has worked hard on facilitating and advancing trade ties with African countries. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli recently chaired a meeting of the Permanent Higher Committee for Monitoring Egyptian-African Relations. Can we talk more about ties, trade ties between Egypt and African countries, and how far Egypt is working hard to make it easier and bigger?
Okay. Since a few years ago, Egypt in 2022 and okay, the AFCFTA, let me talk about the AFCFTA, the African Free Continental Trade Agreement. And I will relate it to the Egyptian work on making trading and working and making investment in Africa as part of the continent. Let me tell you first that we have a couple of billions investments in other African countries, and also other African countries, they have couple of billions investment in Egypt.
Yes.
And with the AFCFTA, with Egypt, one of the first countries ratifying and joining the African Free Continental Trade Agreement, the AFCFTA, and the GTI, the Guided Trade Initiative, which took place on the 7th of October on 2022, Egypt was one of the 7 countries that ratified and joined this agreement. And this shows the seriousness of our country in looking into the trading within Africa, our continent. 60% of our exports of non-oil base is in Africa. And if we look at the AFCFTA is the greatest and biggest trading agreement in the world because it has the highest number of countries in this agreement. Okay. We have the 54 countries. This agreement is crucial for our continent and very important because not only this agreement is not only talking about trading in goods, it's also, it has different phases. It has phase 1, trading in goods, trading in services, dispute settlement, and we have the phase of women and youth empowerment and support, and SMEs, and also intellectual property, and a lot of work under this agreement. This agreement is not only talking about the tariffs and reducing tariffs. There are category A and category B countries, and there are some countries that can afford a 5 years zero tariff to many products agreed upon, of course, between the countries. And some countries, they can't afford the 5 years, so they are doing the zero tariff after 10 years.
Okay.
January 2025, we already have countries that achieved zero tariff in some products.
So some countries started implementing the agreement?
Yes, of course. The agreement started to be implemented since 7th October 2022.
Okay.
And it started with 7 countries. Now, I think there are 47 countries already ratified and 30 countries working. We saw a lot of trading under the Certificate of Origin. And let me talk also about the AFCFTA. As we said, there are tariffs and non-tariff barriers. And in Africa, in our continent, we used to have a lot of non-tariff barriers. For example, if you want to exchange products between Egypt and Ghana, for example, or Egypt and Kenya, and the tariff is reduced, but still you will find some rules and regulations on the labeling or on the contents or on anything that burden and stops the trading. So the AFCFTA is really handling tariff and non-tariff barriers. And under the GTI, the Guided Trade Initiative, which started, as we said, 7th of October, it was like a help and a way to start trading. And under the Guided Trade Initiative, we had 96 products to start with. And as we said, we started with 7 countries, but now more countries are entering in the Guided Trade Initiative under the AFCFTA.
Under this initiative and agreement, what are the prospects of trade, commodities, benefits among African countries?
Okay.
In figures, if we can.
Sure. Africa now is trading among itself with only 12 to 15%, it differs each year, but
Okay.
it's around 12 to 15% intra-African trading.
Okay.
While
Is that good enough?
that's not good enough.
Okay.
That's why the African Union, that's why the Secretariat of the AFCFTA is handling how to enhance the intra-African trading. We have the resources of the world. We have all the raw materials of the world. We have the best asset that any continent wish to have is the young population, is our youth. We are 1.4 billion population in Africa, 54 countries. Maybe not all the countries are big. Maybe the GDP rates of each country alone is not big, but together we are huge. We are really a big economy together. So our African Union, and this is how Egypt realized the potential and realized the strength of getting together as other countries, as South Africa realized, as Kenya, as Ghana, as Rwanda. So the realizing of our power together, the realizing of our strength together is really big. The AFCFTA vision is to move the continent not only to trading in goods, but also to trading in services and industrialization and connectivity. Watching ships, when you want to trade within our continent, a ship will go out of the continent and will come back.
Yep.
When you want to travel, most of the times you go out, even by airplane or cargo plane, you go out of the continent and you come back. So the connectivity is a key success factor, and all the nine different channels, not channels, the nine
roads.
Yeah.
Well, actually, in that
Sure.
field, Egypt has worked hard for connectivity. If we talk about roads, Cairo, Cape Town.
Yes.
Okay. If we talk about different channels through which the whole continent gets closer and is connected. And in light of what you were saying, Professor Nevine, about the initiatives of Egypt in supporting and bolstering trade ties, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli revealed that the Central Bank of Egypt had developed a proposal for establishing more balanced trade deals with African nations. So we want to benefit Egypt, but at the same time we want our African brothers to benefit.
Of course.
How far that win-win situation is very important in trade?
Yes. If you are talking trade, trade is not exports. Exports is one way. You're just sending your products out of your country.
Yes.
But when you're talking trading, it's a two ways.
Yes.
It's a mutual beneficial relationship. Okay. There is also a big initiative that Egypt is one of the pioneer countries in Africa taking serious steps in it. Under the AFCFTA, they wanted to do like a spot or a focal point, aggregators and facilitators for the trading. So they said that they are setting the political side, the legal side, and they wanted ATCs. ATCs are trading companies in each country to be the focal point in each country. And the Central Bank of Egypt is supporting tremendously this initiative of the SMEs. Imagine that the SMEs of Egypt, even the informal economy. The small ladies, the young ladies, the youth that are having small handicrafts or small cosmetics or whatever, very small production. Imagine the amount of trading they can do with 54 countries in the continent. So these initiatives are very crucial, and I want to tell you that the Central Bank of Egypt has made something very good for SMEs in Egypt to support them to export and to support them to go outside of their, to scale up. They have opened in different banks of Egypt an account called the Financial Inclusion Account. That even the unofficial economy and the micro business owners, they can go to the bank and open a financial inclusion account with their ID, without commercial registration, without VAT, without tax card.
Okay.
And this financial inclusion will support them to have a POS, to have a visa machine that they can go to exhibitions, they can go to clubs when they rent a table, or go to malls and they rent a table to sell their products. They can take this POS and use it to bring the money officially into the Central Bank of Egypt. Mm-hmm. This also is supporting them to digitizing. And as we said, under the AFCFTA also there is the digitizing and financial inclusion of women and youth SMEs of Africa. So our country is very much aware, strategically very smart, visionary, and doing steps, very respectable steps on the ground, not just signing MOUs, not signing mutual agreements, but starting a role model country in our continent.
So starting a role model country in the continent, and in that light, how far Egypt can share its expertise in that field with African countries? I'll get the answer from you, but we'll go first to watch this report. We'll be back after this. Stay tuned.
Egypt has exerted tireless efforts to strengthen relations with African nations at all levels and on all fronts of cooperation. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli highlighted the importance of expertise sharing amongst African countries, citing Egypt's pioneering development experience in infrastructure over the past 10 years. Madbouli revealed that Egypt has invested a whopping $170 billion in infrastructure in those 10 years. He said the Central Bank of Egypt has developed a proposal for establishing more balanced trade deals with African nations. Trade deals now account for 60% of Egypt's total non-oil merchandise exports. Egypt aims to increase export value by at least 20% annually from 2024 to 2030, targeting $130 billion by 2026-27. He further highlighted the government's recent achievements in advancing trade ties with the continent, including initiatives to increase bilateral trade. Such efforts play a crucial role in bolstering Egypt's national security and advancing its vital interests. Egypt moves to bolster cooperation ties with African nations, particularly with Nile Basin countries and those in the Horn of Africa. Meetings include a meeting between President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and visiting Kenyan President William Ruto in Cairo, which witnessed the signing of a joint declaration to elevate their two countries' relations to a new level and boost partnerships between them in various fields, and the signing of 12 agreements and memorandums of understanding that expand their cooperation into various sectors. Egypt and Kenya also agreed to intensify efforts to ensure the full and swift implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and agreed to establish an Egyptian-Kenyan Business Council to explore new trade and investment opportunities. Egypt seeks to achieve comprehensive, inclusive and sustainable development in Africa by sharing expertise with several countries on the continent. Tanzania's mega development project, the Julius Nyerere hydroelectric power project, is a clear example in this regard, as the project is constructed by an Egyptian consortium aiming to double Tanzania's energy production, control floods and improve agriculture, as well as solve the country's electricity shortage problem by providing clean power for more than 60 million people. Egypt has recently formed a committee tasked with developing an action plan and comprehensive strategy aimed at doubling Egyptian exports to African countries by 2025. The strategy ensures that Egypt adopts an export-oriented working plan to address the needs of African markets.
Welcome back. So, Professor Nevine, we were talking about the expertise of Egypt in the field of economy and micro and medium-sized business companies and initiatives by the Central Bank of Egypt. How can Egypt share this expertise with African countries?
Of course, by knowing each other, by awareness, by meetings of SMEs, meetings of companies and private sector, because the expertise, we have also young population, we have great engineers, we have a lot of investment and expertise in Africa from Egypt and vice versa. The collaboration between each other and the initiation of the conferences that we share knowledge in, like we saw the conference of the technology of the Ministry of Communication and Technology a few months ago. Another great conference that took place in Egypt 2023 was the Biashara Africa. The Biashara in Afrikaans means Beashara, which is buy and sell. So we have a lot of words in Swahili, for example, that if you listen to them quite well, they are Arabic words.
Okay.
So these are the places that we meet each other, we talk about each other. For example, there was also a big conference in Rwanda, and we have displayed our SMEs and our expertise of Egypt to other SMEs and other private companies from different African countries. So I mean, sharing and awareness and knowing each other. If you're talking about Africa, you're not talking about one country. You're talking about 54 countries. You're talking about English Africa and French Africa. You're talking about even like Angola, they are speaking Portuguese. So I mean, it's different cultures within one country. Let's say Egypt. You have different cultures between people living in Noba and Aswan and people living in Alexandria. So I mean, within one country, you have different cultures, different expertise, different needs. So it is not one country. It's a lot of cultures, a lot of good things.
Diversity of culture.
Exactly.
And expertise in the continent. And Dr. Nevine, if we talk about this, this initiative and working hard of Egypt to strengthen ties, cultural ties, economic ties and trade ties with African countries, how far that can strengthen resilience against external economic shocks?
Of course. We are talking about 1.4 billion population. if we think of the supply chain, if we think of the industrialization and the cooperation between our neighbors, and use the raw materials and the resources we have in our continent, we saw the great work of Egypt in different countries. Let me say, for example, the Julius Nyerere dam.
Power project and dam in Tanzania.
In Tanzania.
Yep.
And we saw the consortium of construction companies that went and made this huge project. Egyptian expertise. Egypt is known for the builders of the pyramids.
Yes.
And here we are after 7 million years, 7,000 years, the pyramids are there. So, and for millions of years, inshallah, we have expertise in construction, in infrastructure. And let's take, for example, one company, national company of the consortium of building the dam in Tanzania, which is the Arab contractors. The Arab contractors, they have projects in more than 25 countries in the continent. Huge projects, very strategic expertise.
Yes.
And I want to mention something. Egypt, when we enter the continent, our continent in Africa, we don't have any hidden agendas. We don't take our expertise only to work in the projects we do in African countries. On the contrary, Egypt, when entered Tanzania, they created 12,000 jobs and trained engineers and technicians, and the people who worked in the project were locals.
Yes.
From the Tanzania. We didn't bring our
labor.
No, we train, we exchange knowledge, we exchange expertise, and we create jobs with very, what you say, professional attitude.
It is also worth mentioning, Dr. Nevine, that Egypt paid for everything in that project.
Of course, a lot of investment and a lot of work, and this is our unity. And
yes.
This is our continent.
And this also takes us to not only, governmental companies that work in Africa. The private sector also is playing a very important role across Africa and in many African countries, working on huge and mega projects across the country,
yeah.
across the continent.
I will not be able to say names of companies, of course, but we have thousands of companies that are well established in the 54 countries.
Yes.
And doing great work. And as we said, it's now the time also for service trading. Not only trading in goods, but trading also in services. A lot of companies, a lot of work for solar energy, for technology, for communication, for health. We have in Kenya a big hospital as well. A lot of companies, a lot of work all over the continent. Egyptian and a lot of Egyptians' expertise are working in different positions in different countries in our continent.
So back to the African Free Trade Agreement, because it's very important and we need to shed more light. Egypt aims to boost intra-continent trade in Africa by 20% in the coming 5 years to reach $7.4 billion. How far you think that will help the African continent, and the role the African Free Trade Agreement can help and play achieving this?
Okay, the AFCFTA is the best thing ever happened to our continent. It is the real African Union. And we see that the Secretariat of the AFCFTA, they are doing a very big job with the different 54 countries, with their political, economical, social, everything. And of course, as we said, with the Guided Trade Initiative, the GTI that started a couple of years ago, it is doing like a pilot and supporting to remove the tariff and the non-tariff barriers. Okay. Also, the establishment of the ATCs to be the focal points in different countries and to be the facilitators and the aggregators. These ATCs, which are called the AFCFTA trading companies, we have the first trading company was in Ghana, the second trading company was in Egypt, and then Rwanda, and then Kenya, and then South Africa. And their role is not only trading. I'm not talking about import and export, I'm talking about trading. Yes, two-way. Two-way, and even trading in services. And their role is to support SMEs, MSMEs, let me say, micro, small, medium enterprises, to support them to export to other countries in the continent. Because the SMEs in our African continent, they are a huge percentage of our economy. And their capability to go out for international trading is not enhanced yet. And also the size of their production and the size of their business will not enable them to do it on their own. So the ATC's role is to support consolidated shipments from the SMEs to other countries. Also, the AFCFTA is not leaving the GTI to work as any private trading companies trying to work. As I'm saying, they are aligning with customs, with ministries of trade. And let me thank also the great work, not only of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Egypt and the political will and the political part and the vision of His Excellency, our beloved President, but also let me thank very much the Ministry of Trading and Investment and the part of the ECCS, the Egyptian Commercial Services, the commercial attachés in Africa. They are doing great relations with the market and bringing real opportunities of trading to our countries, to our country through different channels, through the businessmen associations, through the export councils. They reach the factories and they bring real opportunities, and they are the soldiers in the field with the foreign ministry and the ambassadors of Egypt. So these are soft power and very important in making our African Union and making enhancing the billions of intra-African trading. Yes. Our vision is to move from the 12–15% of intra-African trading to at least 60%. We are trading outside of our continent more than we are trading with each other, and this should not be the case because the raw material and everything good is inside. We have all the capabilities and the abilities to trade together and to start supply chain and industrialization and completing each other.
In light of that, startups business is very promising in the African continent, and Egypt has become one of Africa's top hubs for startups, as it accounts for 14% of the continent's startups and 10.5% of its venture capital. What are the horizons of cooperation in this field?
I see that as we do great in the ecosystem of startups and the ecosystems of SMEs in Egypt, we are capable of sharing this knowledge and sharing this know-how. And also, I dream of cooperation between the startups of Egypt and the startups of any other country in our continent. If the startups are doing, let's say, garments or doing something in the technology or the AI, sharing with other startups in other countries, it has potential, great potential, because we are having a 1.4 billion population market. So this is scaling up for everyone, and no one is left behind. With the cooperation and with the new African Free Continental Trade Agreement and the JTI, no one is left behind. Even startups, even SMEs, they have a hand, and they have serious initiatives for digitizing and for financial inclusion and for cooperation together. And we saw this in Rwanda, we saw this in different conferences, even here in Egypt when it was Biashara Africa. We saw the SMEs from different parts of the continent trying to collaborate and share business together with others in Egypt.
Can we have like a regional African hub for startups in Cairo, for example?
It's a dream. It should come true. Yes, why not?
Why not?
Of course.
Yeah.
We have the capabilities, we have the know-how, and we have the ability, we have the expertise, and the ecosystem of startups in Egypt. If you see the last map of the ecosystem, it's humongous. It's a lot of initiatives, a lot of support from everyone.
Yeah. One last question. Do you think Egypt needs to update its policy approach to economic transformation to fully benefit from the African continent free trade area?
Egypt is actually one of the first countries that entered the AFCFTA. And Egypt is very much aware of the benefits for us and for our continent, and already taking great steps to be included. There was a signature of a great thing called the PAPS, the Pan-African Payment System. And the Central Bank of Egypt approved using the PAPS in Egypt, and this will allow Africa to trade, intra-African trading, with the local money, without hard currency. So if I want to bring products from Ghana, I will pay with my Egyptian pound, and it will arrive there with their currency.
Yes.
And the same, if Rwanda wants to trade with us, or South Africa, each one will trade with their local currencies. So Egypt is benefiting, and Egypt is giving benefits. And as we said, no one is left behind in Africa. Hopefully, we'll see the figures in 2025 to show the great work and the hard work that the Secretariat of the AFCFTA is doing, and the hard work of the political will of Egypt are putting and doing. So the payoff, hopefully by the end of 2025, we will see different percentages and different numbers.
Professor Nevine Nakhla, Professor of Strategic Management, thanks for your time. Thanks for being with us.
I'm honored. Thank you.
That's all for now. Thanks for watching. I'm Mohammed Abdel Menem.